Shingo is a pathetic little rascal, stuck being a corporate slave in a mundane 9-to-5 job. Until one day, he gets reincarnated into another world and gains the title of a rich noble warrior with an abundance of wives and concubines. The story begins with a young knight facing off against a man in a uniform. Palm forward, the knight conjures up a powerful attack and unleashes it towards him. Rocks begin flying everywhere until a white flash blinds everyone. And poof, the danger is gone just like that. A few moments later, a green-haired man named Roderick comes along and orders everyone to get back to work. One laborer praises Count Wendelin, our main protagonist, for his magic being so useful, remarking how he flattened everything in an instant. Despite wanting to head back home, Wendelin reluctantly agrees to help Roderick clear another area of rocks. After, Wendelin returns home and is worn out, but gets a warm welcome from 3 girls when he walks through the door. A girl dressed in robes, named Elise, joins them, and as she sits down we get to see why Wendelin can't keep his eyes straight. Elise is worried about him because he always seems tired, and Wendelin explains that Roderick overworked him again today. The 3 girls, named Lena, Louise, and Wilma, express how his relationship with Roderick is not right and that he treats Wendelin like a slave. However, it seems Wendelin doesn't see himself as anything other than a white-collar office worker. Wendelin leaves abruptly to change his clothes, and just then we're shifted to his past life 10 years ago when his existence was a living hell. One day he came home exhausted like usual and fell asleep by mistake on the couch, but suddenly he awakens and forces himself to get up. He goes on to whip up a lavish 3-dish dinner, but before he could take a single bite he began to lose consciousness, and something extraordinary happened. When Shingo woke up, he wondered where the f*** his pork ribs just went, and why this disgusting meal he's never seen before is in front of him. When reaching for a glass he noticed his hand was like a child's, so he grabs a plate to look at his reflection and sees that he really is a child. He looks around stunned by his luxurious surroundings, and after some observation he notices that he's attending some kind of royal wedding. The chump can't believe his luck, and thinks it must be a dream, so he closes his eyes and tries to sleep again. But a few moments later his father comes along and asks what the hell he's doing trying to sleep at a time like this. He takes little Wendelin away to introduce him to some important guests. However, being new to this life he didn't even know his own name, so he couldn't tell it to them, which embarrassed his father. Luckily his older brother Eric shows up in the nick of time and takes the attention off him. He expresses his thanks to everyone for coming on behalf of himself and Wendelin. It turns out the wedding is actually their older brother Kirk's, who's getting married to the daughter of an emperor. After his speech, Eric sits down with little Wendelin. He states how their father must be relieved that a noble's daughter has married into the family, and Wendelin asks if this makes them nobles too. Eric explains that they're Baumeisters, a respected name, so they're of genuine nobility anyway, which gobsmacks Wendelin as 5 minutes ago he was just an average Joe, ready to put a shotgun in his mouth. Wendelin looks around and thinks that they must be pretty high up to be able to throw a ceremony like this, and enjoys some of the yummy food before him. However, the next day, he's taken aback by the quality of food at breakfast, a stark contrast to yesterday. He's left to eat dry bread and soup which tastes like water. Wendelin looks around and notices that the place looks worse than a homeless shelter, so after breakfast he finds Eric to make sense of what's going on. He tells Eric that he's confused because they were able to throw such a party the day before, but Eric explains it was all for show for their guests, and in reality they're so poor they have to go to KFC to lick other people's fingers. Jokes aside, Eric says that they have to maintain their noble pride in front of others. Now it's back to bread and water. At that moment Wendelin thinks he might have been better off in his previous life, and to make matters worse, he realizes he's the 8th son, so his benefits are minimal. Later, Wendelin looks at a map and sees that they live in the Kingdom of Helmut, which has a population of 1 million. However, upon inspecting the map further, he sees that they live in the Baumeister Knightdom, which has a population of 800, the smallest out of the entire region. Wendelin observes his desolate surroundings, thinking to himself that his life is so screwed. But just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, he finds out his brother Eric is leaving, along with 2 of his other older brothers. It turns out they all agreed to leave once their brother Kurt got married, since they can't afford to split up the land between the 8 of them. They will cease to be nobles, but explain that in reality everything comes down to skills, so they will be fine. Wendelin begs to go with them, but he can't since he's just a little kid, and just like that his 3 brothers set off to discover their own purpose in this world. Angry and determined, Wendelin heads to the library to learn anything he can to change his circumstances. But unfortunately, he can't find any useful books. Upon putting a book back, he accidentally knocks a ball off the shelf along with a couple of pieces of paper. Wendelin picks up the piece of paper, which is actually a magical crystal ball instruction manual. He scoffs at the idea of magic, but something draws him in to carry on reading. It is written that everyone possesses mana, but it's said that only 1 in 10,000 has enough mana to cast magic spells. Wendelin figures it's all just a bunch of BS, but for the sake of having no regrets, he decides to take a leap of faith and see what happens. He attempts to cast a magic spell on the crystal ball, but nothing happens. However, a few moments later, the crystal ball shines like a rainbow, which proves that he has a high aptitude for magic. Wendelin immediately begins searching for more magic guides, but is suddenly met by his father, who orders him to ditch the stupid books and find some firewood from the forest. Later, he attempts to activate his magic skills but fails miserably. Out of nowhere, a mysterious man appears and descends out of thin air, declaring that finally he stumbled upon someone with a magic level to match his own. As it so happens, the dashing stranger is none other than Alfred Rainford, a mage who was the former court magician of the esteemed dukedom of Blycroder, one of the mainlands of their kingdom. They unintentionally provoke a wild boar that rushes at Wendelin, who almost pees his pants. Wendelin tries running away, but Alfred grabs him and makes him face his fear. The wild boar charges at them and Wendelin is shitting his pants. However, as the boar gets closer, he casts a wind spell, pushing it back completely. Alfred congratulates Wendelin on using his first magic spell. But it's not over, as the wild red-eyed boar rushes at them once again. However, Alfred effortlessly blows it away with a mere flick of the finger, showing off his flawless magic. Wendelin's jaw hits the floor, and just when he thinks he can't be any more surprised, Alfred drops a bombshell and reveals that Wendelin is destined to become a magician, far greater than even him. Later, Wendelin walks through the door of his home, greeted by the familiar sight of his family bustling about. The sad Brokey drinks a cup of hot water, calling it tea, which triggers memories of the day Alfred first offered him the same beverage. He recalls with amusement how the magic master managed to fit an entire boar into a small bag on his belt. Wasting no time, Alfred reminds Wendelin that their magic lessons will begin the next day, stressing the importance of keeping their arrangements secret. Wendelin discovers that if their partnership is found out, he could become the village lord, displacing his egotistical older brother from his inheritance. This power shift weighs heavily on his mind as he considers the implications for his new family. Wendelin's first lesson involves combining Alfred's magic with his own abilities, aiming to synchronize their mana. Despite Alfred's reassurances of Wendelin's potential, the young apprentice notices the unnaturally cold touch of his mentor's hands. Meanwhile, Wendelin's father discovers that the crystal ball has been moved and suspects Wendelin's involvement. However, he ends up laughing off the idea, assuming that his son is a disappointment and lacking of magical talent. As the days pass, Wendelin makes remarkable progress under Alfred's guidance, mastering many advanced techniques of magic. Alfred even surprises Wendelin's family by bringing a basket of fresh vegetables, saying that he went out to fetch them himself. That evening, the family gathers around the table, marveling at the abundance of fresh vegetables. Wendelin's father, in his usual playful manner, teases him about using magic to acquire the veggies, with his laughter filling the room. On the contrast, Wendelin's older brother remains somber and anxious as usual. Despite the teasing, their magic lessons resume, and Wendelin's abilities continue to blossom. He learns to use magic in order to sense things, and even manages to hunt down a horo, an extremely rare bird-like creature, proving Wendelin's worth and proficiency. During their meal, Wendelin dares Alfred to a wasabi challenge. To Wendelin's amazement, Alfred accepts the challenge and devours the wasabi without so much as a flinch, leaving Wendelin in awe. Alfred then warns Wendelin about delving too deep into the woods, and cautions him regarding the dangers of the enchanted forest, which is filled with monsters. Despite the risks, many people roam the forest in search of rare herbs and medicine, but most are hoping for quick riches in the form of treasure. After supper, Wendelin practices manipulating water and confides in Alfred about his suspicions regarding his older brother's spying. Alfred recognizes Wendelin's brother's fear regarding his inheritance rights and asks Wendelin if he desires to become a lord. However, Wendelin expresses his reluctance, preferring not to burden himself with such responsibilities. Alfred then suggests that Wendelin considers the path of an adventurer, akin to his own journey. Unexpectedly, a dark aura begins to shroud around Alfred's arm, causing him intense pain. He realizes that he still needs more time to overcome this challenge. Later, Wendelin shares his aspiration of becoming an adventurer with his family. However, his father crushes his dreams, citing financial constraints that prevent them from sending Wendelin to the Adventurers Academy. The following day, Alfred sits down with Wendelin and explains that the Adventurers Academy is located in Branchburg, a bustling commercial hub where even children can join guilds and sell hunting items for real money. Wendelin's excitement surges at the prospect of earning enough to fund his tuition. However, to gain admission, he must first master the travel spell for flying. Alfred demonstrates the spell by lifting Wendelin high into the sky, showing him a breathtaking view of the world below. That very night, an ominous dark aura returns, engulfing Alfred's entire body and causing him excruciating pain. The next day, while practicing the flight spell, Alfred informs Wendelin that their training will conclude soon. Wendelin has made remarkable progress and is now deemed ready to embark on his journey. During an evening meal at home, their father recounts a chilling tale of the Whispering Dead in the nearby forest, an undead creature with intelligence. Wendelin suddenly realizes that Alfred is one of these beings and rushes out in search of him. Alfred reveals his truth to Wendelin. He became one of the Whispering Dead 5 years ago. The previous Duke's eldest son fell ill, prompting the Duke's journey to the Enchanted Forest in search of a cure. Alfred accompanied him for protection, but they were outnumbered by an army of 2,000 monsters. Exhausted and overwhelmed, Alfred held a deep regret that transformed him into a Whispering Deaf. However, these creatures move on when their wishes are fulfilled. Alfred's wish was to pass on his magic knowledge, a goal he accomplished. As a final test, Alfred instructs Wendelin to perform sacred magic and purify him, thereby ending his existence. Initially resistant, Wendelin eventually agrees to honor Alfred's wishes. Tearfully, he follows his master's instructions and purifies him, watching as Alfred vanishes into the void. Years pass, and a younger Wendelin, armed with his magical abilities and newfound knowledge, leaves his home with his belongings, embarking on his journey to become an adventurer. Upon arriving at the Adventurers Academy, Wendelin is filled with hope, eager to make new friends and embark on his new journey. The academy buzzes with students from all kinds of diverse backgrounds, each showcasing their unique magical abilities. Louise Jolland Aurelia Overweg, the fiery third daughter of the Overweg family, demonstrates her prowess with magical fists, while Ina Suzanne Hillenbrand, the spirited third daughter of the Hillenbrand family, excels with the spear. As Wendelin nervously waits for someone to approach him, his turn to introduce himself arrives, much to his chagrin. The room falls silent as he shares his name, revealing that he is the only magic student on scholarship. Despite this, his magical abilities are already on par with those of top-class adventurers. Afterward, the professor distributes sheets of paper, instructing students to form groups as training commences the following month. Wendelin feels alone and isolated during lunchtime, sensing the weight of his lonely status amidst the happiness of his peers. Sitting alone, Wendelin's solitude is interrupted when Louise catches his eye and beckons over a young swordsman named Erwin von Arnim. Erwin, the spirited fifth son of his family, is intrigued by Wendelin's evident magical prowess, prompting him to join their group. In class, the professor emphasizes the importance of teamwork in earning money through hunting. Erwin devises a plan with the girls, proposing that they outshine Wendelin by bagging more games to impress him. On the day of the exchange, the Axe group proudly presents a hefty boar. However, Erwin's group steals the spotlight by showcasing 3 sizable boars, aiming to make a lasting impression on Wendelin. Wendelin enters the scene empty-handed, but soon surprises everyone by pulling out various wild animals out of his magical bag. The astonishing display of Wendelin's magical prowess sends shockwaves through the other groups, causing them to back off, including the arrogant axe-wielding group, who can't help but feel outclassed. When Wendelin receives his earnings, he extends an invitation for others to join him for a meal, only to find himself standing alone, the empty space around him echoing his loneliness. That night, Erwin and the girls open up about their family backgrounds, revealing how poverty has limited their opportunities. In their families, only the firstborns are entitled to education and land inheritance, leaving them discouraged and demotivated from pursuing their dreams. Frustrated by the injustice, Ina passionately argues for fighting for their aspirations, while Louise offers a glimmer of hope, encouraging them to use their limited magic to enhance their physical abilities. Determined, they resolve to hunt more animals to catch Wendelin's attention. The next day, they venture deep into the enchanted forest in search of better prey, only to find themselves surrounded by a pack of wild wolves. Erwin sustains injuries in the skirmish, but Wendelin, utilizing his magical detection abilities, senses their plight and rushes to their aid in the infirmary. After the encounter with the wolves, Erwin and his group apologize to Wendelin, feeling unworthy of being in his group. However, Wendelin expresses his desire to be part of their team, reassuring them that both sides have been using each other for mutual gain. Shortly after, the professor makes an exciting announcement. The Duke of Bleichroder has extended an invitation to all Academy students for a grand party. Excitement fills the air as students eagerly anticipate the event. However, the axe-wielding group attempts to undermine Wendelin's worth, suggesting that the party is merely a ploy to introduce the Duke to him, disregarding the significance of other students. Despite the attempts to diminish his value, Wendelin, along with Erwin's group and the other students, prepare themselves for the grand affair, dressing in their finest attire. At the event, the Duke introduces himself as Amadeus Freitag von Bleichroder and requests Wendelin's company. Wendelin agrees, but only on the condition that his group can accompany him, pointing towards Erwin and the girls, who are taken aback by the unexpected request. As they enter the Duke's mansion, they are greeted by the court magician, Brantag Ringstadt, who instantly recognizes Wendelin as a disciple of Alfred due to his magical bag. Brantag reveals that he was able to track Alfred's magic, but it disappeared 7 years ago. After confirming his status, Wendelin reveals that the bag contains belongings of the men who adventured with Alfred, and he expresses his desire to return them. Later, outside the palace, Erwin and the girls reflect on Wendelin's experiences. To their surprise, he appears, and they confess their initial intentions to use him. However, Wendelin points out that both sides had their reasons, and he genuinely wants to form a group with them. They accept his offer, realizing the sincerity in his words. Suddenly, Amadeus and Brantag approach, informing Wendelin that in recognition of his gesture, they will receive a significant amount of money, and he will inherit his master's inn. In the end, Wendelin finds himself dining alone in the grand mansion, contemplating the desire to share his newfound wealth. He gazes at the list of his group members' names, cherishing the friendships he has formed and looking forward to the adventures that lie ahead. Wendelin decides to bring his party members to Erich's upcoming wedding ceremony, which is scheduled to take place during the summer break of the academy. They travel on a magic airship with Brantag, who serves as their guide and is heading to the capital. During the journey, Louise dresses extravagantly, hoping to catch the eye of a nobleman at the wedding. However, she stumbles and leans on Erwin, who nervously grips a bar, fearing the possibility of the ship crashing. Brantag appears on the ship to report on the situation of their domain, reassuring Louise that magical ships are safe. However, he mentions the potential threat of a giant dragon, and suddenly, an undead version of an ancient dragon surrounds them. A skeletal dragon emerges and attacks the ship, causing panic among the passengers. The captain assures them that Brantag will handle the situation, but Brantag explains that he cannot use sacred magic against the dragon. Instead, he instructs Wendelin to take on the challenge while he protects the ship. Wendelin accepts the challenge and confronts the dragon, using his sacred magic to defeat it with guidance from Brantag. He places the dragon's bones, including a red gem from its chest, into the sacred bag. Back on the ship, Wendelin expresses his desire to make a purchase in the capital. However, Eruterio, a merchant friend of Brantag with political influence, arrives and explains that it might be complicated for him to make such a purchase. Upon their arrival in the capital, the students are eager to go shopping. Brantag excuses himself, leaving Eruterio in charge. Out of the blue, an army approaches, and a knight expresses gratitude to Wendelin for his bravery in defeating the dragon. He informs Wendelin that the king eagerly awaits his presence. They are swiftly escorted to a waiting carriage, which transports them to the castle. Once there, the other students head off to visit Erich, leaving Wendelin and Eruterio alone. Inside the castle's grand halls, the king expresses his heartfelt appreciation to Wendelin, granting him the prestigious title of baronet, along with the twin dragon medal. Wendelin solemnly pledges his loyalty to the king as part of the ceremony. Meanwhile, at Erich's residence, Brantag discusses Wendelin's new status with the other students. He explains that within the Baumeister lineage, the highest rank achieved is that of a knight, meaning Wendelin now heads a new family branch. The students feel a tinge of sadness, worried that this newfound responsibility might hinder Wendelin's adventures. However, Brantag offers reassurance, explaining that without any landed estates, Wendelin remains free to pursue his adventurous endeavors, which lifts their spirits. Back at the castle, inevitable, the process of selling assets begins, leading to a disagreement over Wendellin's fair share of the proceeds. Lord Marshal Edgar and Lord Commissioner Ruckner negotiate over the value of dragon bones and magic stones. However, Cardinal Hohenheim steps in, revealing Wendellin's honored status as an emissary of light, swiftly resolving the dispute. Aratirio adds that the Cardinal is a savvy individual who would anticipate favors in return for his support. Upon leaving the castle, Wendelin encounters a man attempting to recruit him as an officer, only to be stopped by the kingdom's guards. Aratirio advises him to get used to such attention, as being a baronet will attract many offers for employment and marriage proposals, which can be draining. The next day is Erich's wedding, where Wendelin meets his brothers Erich, Paul, and Helmut. Erich reveals that their family has yet to receive a wedding gift, as they lack the funds for an extravagant present. Moreover, the Baumeister family serves as vassals to the Duke of Bleichroder, who is expected to provide financial assistance. However, the Baumeisters are unable to repay their debt to the Duke. Feeling empathy for his brother, Wendelin offers to provide the wedding gifts, despite finding the responsibilities of nobility burdensome and overwhelming. Later, Aratirio presents Wendelin with a jar of melted rice with koji, assuming Wendelin intends to trade it. However, Wendelin surprises everyone by teleporting them to his home, declaring it their new residence. He then teaches them how to prepare miso using the koji. As they enjoy the delicious miso, Wendelin reminisces about his days as an office worker, reflecting on the distinction between fermentation and putrefaction. The day concludes with Wendelin happily serving his family and friends. The scene shifts to Cardinal Hohenheim, who summons his granddaughter Elise and informs her that he has chosen her future husband. After the church ceremony concludes, Cardinal Hohenheim invites Wendelin to offer a token of gratitude. Following this, Elise Katharina von Hohenheim, the Cardinal's granddaughter, enters and introduces herself. Wendelin notices her magical abilities, particularly her expertise in holy healing magic, which has earned her the title Saint Hohenheim in the city. Surprisingly, the Cardinal reveals his desire for Elise to marry, mentioning her numerous suitors. Wendelin jokingly suggests joining them, but the Cardinal takes it seriously and swiftly arranges their engagement, showcasing his political acumen. Later, the Cardinal discusses the engagement with his butler, revealing that he had previously obtained the king's approval. He also acknowledges Wendelin's significant gift, indicating his understanding of the church's influence. Meanwhile, Wendelin, disguised as a joker, shares the news of his engagement with his friends. He realizes that there is no such thing as romantic marriages for nobles, and among them, love marriages are a rarity. His brother's wife helps him with his clown costume as Wendelin takes to the streets in his Joker disguise to avoid being recognized. The heartbroken guy just wishes to see the sights of the capital without any disturbance. However, a spearman notices him and identifies him, causing a commotion. People start to recognize him and a crowd gathers, much to his dismay, so to escape the overwhelmed crowd, he teleports away. Back at their inn, Wendelin complains to Erwin and Erich about being recognized. Erwin suggests hiring him as a bodyguard and he agrees, making him his henchman. Wendelin later teleports to the Cardinal's house where he meets Elise. He goes to the rooftop to have a private conversation so he can get to know her better. In reality, he wants to ask her opinion about their engagement because he doesn't want to get stuck in an unhappy marriage all his life. Luckily, when he asks about her consent, she tells him that she's quite happy with the arrangement, leaving him satisfied. In the evening, back at Wendelin's mansion, he informs the girls about his new job, prompting their interest in being hired as well. However, Erwin teases them about becoming his subordinates, which they adamantly refuse. Instead, they playfully suggest becoming Wendelin's concubines. Louise begins designing clothing, explaining to Ina that becoming Wendelin's concubine could provide her with opportunities to start a school and gain recognition from her family. Inspired by this, Ina joins in the discussion. Overhearing the girls' debate about clothing, Wendelin receives an invitation for a date with Elise. The following day, they enjoy lunch together, and after the meal, the butler suggests that as a gentleman, Wendelin should consider giving Elise a gift. Feeling embarrassed, Wendelin agrees, and they visit a jewelry store to browse engagement rings. Wendelin is taken aback by the high prices, but after careful consideration, he selects a specially crafted engagement ring with a magical stone, priced at 300 gold coins. During the carriage ride home, Elise assumes that Wendelin chose the ring because it allows him to store mana in the stone. However, Wendelin rizzes her by saying that he picked it because he thought it was perfect for her. Flattered by his sincerity, Elise is touched when Wendelin infuses the stone with mana, causing it to shine and revealing the universe within. Meanwhile, the Cardinal seeks his butler's opinion on Wendelin. The blunt butler remarks that Wendelin treated Elise like an ordinary girl, and they cannot predict her thoughts. As the day comes to a close, Wendelin, being a working class at heart, reflects that the lunch would have been much better with soy sauce. At their mansion, the group discusses their strategy, named Operation Concubine Seduction, which they plan to resume upon returning to the academy, seeing it as an opportunistic time as Elise is in the capital. Meanwhile, a girl enters and takes the chance to inquire about Wendelin from his friends, while Wendelin himself receives a task from the king to subdue another dragon, viewing it as a menial servant's job. Elsewhere, a knight explains the kingdom's dire situation. There are insufficient supplies, yet they must confront an ancient dragon. Only mages can withstand the dragon's fiery breath, and they are joined by Armstrong, the palace magician, a big, muscular, enthusiastic mage who vows to swiftly defeat the ancient dragon. They fly to the military garrison on the border of Palkenia Prairie. Meanwhile, Erich explains that as Wendelin goes to defeat the dragon, his army must handle rampaging monsters. Since they lack an official commander, they appoint Erwin, Wendelin's henchman, to lead them, while Wendelin tackles the dragon. It's revealed the palace intentionally chose him for the task to avoid granting him vast lands as a reward. As a noble of the robe, rewards will be settled with medals and money. As several men arrive at the door ready for battle, Erwin nervously leads them to the battlefield. As night falls, Louise, Ina, and Erwin feel the weight of anticipation for their debut battle against the monsters. Their anxiety heightens when Elise arrives unexpectedly. It turns out they summoned her to assist with healing, but she becomes saddened upon learning that Wendelin left to confront the dragon. The next morning, Armstrong, Brantag, and Wendelin arrive on the battlefield. Armstrong dons magical armor and engages the dragon, swiftly overpowering it. However, the armor drains his magic rapidly, posing a risk if he depletes it entirely. Therefore, he focuses on restraining the dragon, allowing Wendelin to deliver the final blow. With a decisive strike, they defeat the dragon, and Wendelin stores its remains in his magic bag. Brantag suggests selling the dragon parts, but Wendelin and Armstrong warn him of the imminent threat of more monsters. Meanwhile, the boys enjoy breakfast with Elise when a soldier arrives with news of Wendelin's victory over the dragon, and the soldiers prepare to return. Though relieved, their joy is short-lived as they learn of the overwhelming number of monsters on the front lines. When Elise's mana runs low, she replenishes it using the gem in her ring. Reflecting on Wendelin's earlier claim of pretending to be a hero, she realizes that if he can muster courage, she can too, even in moments of depleted mana. Continuing to tend to the medicines, Elise listens to the soldiers praising Wendelin, speaking highly of him. One morning, a soldier arrives at the camp mentioning Wendelin's last name, causing Elise to panic and rush to see him. However, she discovers it's her brother, exhausted on the ground. Suddenly, Wendelin appears beside her, and the surprise causes her to faint. When she regains consciousness, Wendelin assures her that everything was a success, thanks to hearing her speak so highly of him. She confesses that she knows he's not a hero, which earns a smile from him. Moments later, the excited Armstrong rushes over to embrace Elise, revealing himself to be her uncle. Eventually, everyone moves to the mansion in the capital. The girls worry that the plan is in crisis as Elise will be living with Wendelin. When Elise visits Wendelin, she assumes he's already engaged to Louise and Ina. However, Wendelin asks if she's okay with the idea of concubines, to which she responds positively. Suddenly, Louise and Ina express their desire to marry him, and he agrees. As Helmut's wedding day nears, Wendelin's deeply religious brothers remind him of the nation's close watch on his actions. They mention an upcoming tournament where he'll have to rely solely on his sword skills, without any magical help. This news makes Wendelin uneasy since he's used to relying on magic and is basically just useless without it. During their training session, the girls' ability to boost their abilities with magic helps them defeat Erwin, who reacts dramatically. They notice Wendelin flying overhead, and Ina mentions his meeting with the Cardinal later. In a chat with Brantag afterward, the guys discuss the tournament details. Brantag emphasizes the importance of winning to avoid embarrassment. He suggests the girls practice without magic, and Erwin realizes he needs to step up his game after Brantag's gentle warning. Over dinner, they learn that Warren, the previous tournament winner, won't be competing this time. Wendelin feels better knowing this, as his main goal is to avoid feeling embarrassed during the tournament. Brantag shares the news that Elise will join their adventurer group, bringing joy to everyone, even though she won't compete in the tournament. Erwin, however, feels uneasy as the only member without magical abilities. Wendelin surprises them by declaring his determination to win the tournament. The following day, they all train rigorously, with Erwin particularly focused on standing out. During a meal break, Wendelin drops the bombshell that Warren will indeed compete, as the king wants him to win to fulfill a teaching requirement. This news adds to Erwin's anxiety, prompting him to inquire if Wendelin would kick him out of the group if he loses. Wendelin reassures him, revealing that Elise is also training in secret due to her fear of disappointment, which helps Erwin realize that even those with magic can feel nervous. He apologizes to the girls and resumes training. As the day of the tournament arrives, Elise surprises the boys with food, while Wendelin, exhausted, falls asleep standing. When his turn to fight against Warren arrives, he gathers his resolve, knowing he must do his best despite the formidable opponent. Warren delivers a knockout blow to Wendelin, leaving him staggering back to Brantag and Armstrong, who are more spectators than cheerleaders at this point. Following Louise's return, almost making it to the preliminaries, Ina finds herself squaring off against Rodrich, an annoyingly stubborn spear user obsessed with Wendelin and a hopeful recruit for his group. To her astonishment, she unfortunately loses and rejoins Wendelin and Louise, sharing insights about Rodrich, a skilled merchant and accountant. Noticing Wendelin dozing off, Elise apologizes for his absence, revealing his surprising role as the meal's chef. Meanwhile, Erwin advances to the final round, gearing up to challenge Warren. Despite lacking magical prowess, the girls advise Erwin to reconsider, fearing he'll be outmatched. However, Erwin is resolute, inspired by the encouraging notes left by Wendelin on their meal. With a newfound sense of confidence, he takes a bite of the food and resolves to compete to avoid disappointing his friend. Later, we witness Warren training Erwin and Ina alongside Rodrich, hinting at their eventual success. Meanwhile, Wendelin joins Louise as they prepare to train with Armstrong, their martial arts instructor. As time elapses, tax reports arrive for Wendelin's father, who promptly passes them on to Kurt. During this period, Kurt's wife and her son Carl pay him a visit, mentioning someone's interest in discussing Wendelin, which infuriates Kurt. Later, he receives an anonymous letter, read by his wife, disclosing that Wendelin is currently exploring ancient ruins. Meanwhile, Wendelin and his friends are rejoicing as 3 years have swiftly passed, marking their transition into adulthood and freedom from noble obligations. They've embraced the life of adventurers and embark on their inaugural mission, unburdened by aristocratic ties. However, their excitement is tempered when Brantag arrives with a letter from the king, tasking Wendelin with an expedition to ancient ruins, an unexpected echo of their past. En route to the ruins, they inquire about Brantag's presence, learning that the king assigned him to oversee their journey. Given the history of adventurers failing to return from the ruins, suspicions arise about a lurking dragon. Committed to their moniker, Dragon Busters, they feel compelled to investigate. Venturing deeper into the ancient ruins, they unwittingly activate a cunning magical trap, originating from a long-forgotten civilization. In an instant, they find themselves transported to the depths of the ruins, greeted by an inscription with a cryptic, inverted message. Brantag, their guide, explains the dire situation. They must ascend through the labyrinthine ruins to escape. However, their unfamiliarity with the surroundings renders teleportation useless, leaving them no choice but to embark on the difficult climb upwards. Navigating a winding staircase, they eventually arrive at a dimly lit corridor leading to a vast chamber filled with golems, animated stone guardians of the ancient ruins. As the door seals shut behind them, the golems spring to life, their mechanical movements signaling an imminent attack. Led by Wendelin, the group mounts a valiant defense, ensuring that he conserves his magical reserves for the trials ahead. Amidst the chaos, they stumble upon the skeletal remains of previous adventurers, a grim reminder of the dangers that lie ahead. Their journey continues as they press onward, encountering more golems through another staircase. Meanwhile, in the royal court, the king confers with Armstrong, expressing growing concern over Wendelin's prolonged absence and the rapid growth of false rumors circulating about him. Evil smirks from a group of courtiers hint at malicious intent towards Wendelin's supporters. Baron Ruckner emerges as the mastermind behind the deception, scheming to elevate Kurt's children as heirs by engineering Wendelin's downfall. Back in the depths of the ruins, the group perseveres, locked in a relentless battle against the golems, their endurance tested as they take turns resting in brief respites. Suddenly, they stumble upon a seemingly empty chamber, only for a majestic gem dragon to awaken at its center. At a critical juncture, with Ina ensnared by the golems and Elise's magical reserves dwindling, Wendelin devises a plan to combine his magic with Brantak's. Despite their efforts, they find themselves unable to overcome the dragon's formidable defenses, their mana rapidly depleting. Sensing their dire situation, Louise intervenes, swiftly healing Enna before casting a radiant light spell on Wendelin. In a moment of unexpected intimacy, their lips meet in a kiss, triggering a surge of power that enables them to vanquish the dragon. Exhausted, they collapse, only to awaken later in a bed and their trial is seemingly over. As they regain consciousness, Wendelin overhears the girls discussing Elise's unconventional spell. Although they acknowledge that the kiss was unnecessary, they understand the sentiment behind her actions. Subsequently, Wendelin and Elise venture into a library within the ruins, where they reunite with Brantak. He enlightens them about the ruins' origins, revealing that they were constructed by Count Ickelberg, a powerful magician determined to safeguard his legacy. Exploring further, they encounter a collection of ancient ships serving as magical cores. Activating a lever, they unlock a hidden hatch, unveiling a mysterious hideout concealed within the depths of the ruins. Upon their return to the castle, they begin sorting through their findings and learn that the king intends to purchase everything except the magic circle, which the mage will buy. The sum the king offers each of them, a staggering 2 million gold coins, leaves Wendelin astonished. Over tea with Armstrong later, Wendelin shares his plan to depart from the capital and pursue adventures in Breitberg. Armstrong agrees, pledging to uncover the individual behind the rumors about Wendelin. While surprised by this revelation, he learns from Armstrong that advancement often attracts envy. The group collectively decides to reject the offer of 2 million gold coins each, opting instead to donate their earnings to Armstrong. Consequently, Wendelin finds himself with a substantial sum of 10 million gold coins, anticipating that this newfound wealth may lead to further problems. Meanwhile, at the home of the finance officer's brother, a gathering of Wendelin's detractors convenes upon hearing that he survived. Fueled by their animosity towards him, they begin plotting his disappearance once again. At this juncture, a mysterious hooded figure is seen observing Wendelin and the group. While they enjoy their meal, he mentions their intention to leave the mansion in the care of someone trustworthy, realizing the need for loyalty. After some deliberation, they settle on hiring Rodrich for the role, as he's often the most overlooked and ignored guy of their squad. They offer him the position with a cake, and Rodrich, being a self-proclaimed noble, eagerly accepts it. Later, Louise detects the presence of the hooded figure and alerts the others. Rodrich suggests that Wendelin should leave the capital to uncover the person behind the rumors of his demise, but Wendelin is determined to take action. The hooded figure is unveiled to be a girl. Subsequently, the group proceeds to the Magic Guild, where their guide leads them to Lucas Gotts Beckenbauer, the laboratory director. Wendelin requests the use of Lucas's magic circle, which has the ability to materialize anything one imagines. During the process, Lucas makes a remark about the advantages of this condition, leading to an awkward moment for Wendelin and confusion among the girls. In their second attempt, they all conceal themselves, and Wendelin successfully materializes his desired object right before them. After their return to the mansion, Wendelin hosts a gratitude-filled gathering. Rodrich unveils the source of the rumor, the finance officer's brother. This makes Wendelin to initiate an investigation. Meanwhile, the hooded observer witnesses the feast, including the magically conjured tuna by Wendelin. Intrigued, she bursts into the mansion, causing a commotion. Despite attempts to shield him, she confronts Wendelin and begins devouring the food. Edgar arrives, introducing the intruder as Wilma Edel von Asgahan, his daughter, who offers herself as a bodyguard or concubine. Brantak clarifies her condition, the hero syndrome, which boosts her strength magically. Wendelin then reveals his plan to relocate to Breitberg for hunting, but Edgar surprises him with a revelation about monster hunting there. The Duke also approaches Wendelin with a request. The scene transitions to Kurt's wife, who discloses her brother-in-law's scheme to her husband. Kurt's avarice worries her. However, she's taken aback to see Wendelin and the other children outside the window. The scene shifts to Wendelin's parents' house, where he unhappily drinks the infamous tasteless tea which reminds him of his poor times. His father, Sir Arthur, reveals that 15 years ago, the Duke of Bleichroder led an army into the Enchanted Forest in search of a magical cure-all. Unfortunately, they ended up being dead, and Alfred Rainford was also a part of that army. Brantag explains that the corpses of those fallen soldiers have now become undead, specifically zombies. He adds that the Duke has tasked him and Wendelin to purify all the undead before they can become greater undead, like liches. As the zombies are on their land, Arthur is entitled to 30% of any profit gained from the zombies' materials, but Kurt greedily demands 50% and tries to insist the zombies and their belongings be left in the forest instead of being given proper funerals. Kurt claims that their soldiers were poor and they had already held their funerals. It becomes clear that Kurt is mad, but Elise intervenes in the conversation and says that she'll be more than happy to help conduct the funerals again after purification. The annoyed Kurt taunts her, saying that she's doing all this for the sake of fame. Upon hearing this, Erwin loses his patience and he yells at Kurt to stop all this nonsense. An argument ensues between them, but Wendelin calms everyone down and humbly accepts his brother's deal. However, the girls are furious by Kurt's attitude and they defend Wendelin by telling Kurt that even though he's the younger brother, he's still a baron. This angers Kurt even more and Wendelin notices the change in his brother. Later on, Kurt starts giving orders to the villagers to work, but they inquire about Wendelin and his work purifying their relatives. An old man says that he wants the Dragon Slayer to purify his deceased son, but Kurt shows no emotions. He becomes furious and his assistant announces that Wendelin is just an adventurer and won't stay in the town for long. The scene then shifts to Kurt's house where Marlene, Herman's wife, has prepared pie to show support for Wendelin. She tells him that her grandfather is also an undead and he promises to return her belongings. She then suggests that he should be the lord of the domain, which scares Herman because Kurt hates Wendelin. Wendelin realizes Kurt's animosity and jealousy towards his success and is hated by the servants and villagers, who would prefer Wendelin inherit the lordship. The following day marks the beginning of the purification efforts, prompting the emergence of the spirits. With Elise's aid, Wendelin extends the reach of the purification, building a barrier that automatically cleanses any undead crossing its path. Despite their efforts, Marlene's grandfather remains elusive among the spirits. Suddenly, a wyvern and dragon materialize, prompting Wilma to slay them with her axe, facilitating their purification. As more monsters surface, the group engages them in battle, systematically purifying each one. Eventually, they confront Marlene's grandfather, now transformed into a lich. He inquires about his granddaughter, and Wendelin assures him she's safe with a caring individual. This reassurance soothes him, and Elise proceeds to purify him, allowing him to return to the village. Upon delivering the armors to the villagers, they express their gratitude. However, Kurt's fragile ego makes him intervene, insisting they hand the armors to the blacksmith due to iron shortages in the domain. The villagers protest, wishing to honor their deceased loved ones by utilizing the armor for their funerals. Wendelin intervenes, thwarting Kurt's attempts to seize the armors by offering him a large iron block instead. This gesture frustrates Kurt, and appreciative of Wendelin's intervention, the villagers begin to regard him as a prospective leader for the domain. Upon his return to the Duke's estate, Wendelin receives orders to head back to the village to oversee the sorting of the villagers' belongings before handing them over. In the village, a funeral is held, with Elise leading the prayers. Soon, discussions arise about Kurt's absence, and the mayor, under the guise of Mike Falls, listens in on the villagers' conversations. As the villagers gather, the group entertains them, catching the attention of the mayor, who later approaches Wendelin with a proposition to become the lord of the domain. He reveals that this decision aligns with the palace's wishes. Brantag's arrival confirms the palace's endorsement of Wendelin as the lord of the lands. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the king strolling with his allies, talking about a potential succession regarding Wendelin. Brantag takes Wendelin aside for a private conversation, delving into the region's history of poor leadership characterized by incompetence and corruption, exemplified by Kurt's atrocious behavior. To rectify this situation, the king devised a secret plan with his trusted advisors. Their aim is to lure Kurt into attacking Wendelin, resulting in his arrest and subsequent resignation, thereby clearing the path for Wendelin's ascension to lordship. The Duke's involvement in the undead purification mission conveniently served as a distraction for executing this scheme. When Wendelin asks Brantag about the delayed disclosure of this plan, Brantag reassures him, asserting that the outcome would have remained unchanged regardless of Wendelin's prior knowledge. Wendelin expresses concern about the potential dangers of the plan, but Brantag offers reassurance, explaining that he has been vigilant in monitoring the situation and even refrained from drinking for a couple of days to maintain peak focus. Despite his lingering doubts about assuming the role of Lord, Wendelin acknowledges Brantag's points about his capacity for influence, power, and financial resources, conceding that he may indeed be the most suitable candidate to lead the region's development. The following day, Wendelin tells his friends about the palace's plan. They view it positively and encourage him to embrace the orders without overthinking, as he typically does. Soon after, Amelie and her sons visit Wendelin, and in his usual charming magician uncle fashion, he entertains them with tricks like creating water balls and mini rainbows. Observing the innocence of the children, his friends express pity, knowing that once their father is removed from his position, they might lose their noble titles and possibly face exile. Later that night, Wendelin and his friends enjoy dinner with Herman when they are startled by the sounds of shouting outside. Investigating, they find a group of disgruntled villagers on their way to the current lord, urging him to name Wendelin as his heir. Unbothered by the idea of getting in trouble, they show they're not happy with how Kurt's been ruling unfairly. Seeing how serious they are, Wendelin asks for some time to deal with the problem. He surprises them by saying he's going to stick around longer, even though people were saying he'd leave soon. Brantag figures out the village chief is behind the rumors and talks to him, saying he shouldn't mess with other people's plans. Brantag admits the chief means well, but reminds him that the palace doesn't like people doing things on their own. Thankful for the warning, the village chief promises to keep looking out for the village and tells Brantag to be careful of Amelie before leaving. As Brantag makes his way back to the mansion, he finds Wendelin immersed in thoughts about Kurt's potential fate post-removal from his position. His mind gravitates towards the possibility of Kurt facing exile, but Brantag interjects, emphasizing that the palace wouldn't hesitate to silence Kurt permanently. The realization weighs heavily on Wendelin, who dreads the prospect of losing his brother. Determined to intervene, he resolves to approach Kurt the following morning. In their conversation, he proposes a pragmatic arrangement. He offers Kurt a parcel of land upon assuming the role of lord, pledging financial support for its development in return. Viewing it as a mutually beneficial solution, Wendelin carefully marks the undeveloped land on a map. However, Kurt's reaction is far from receptive. Consumed by rage, he tears the map to shreds, accusing Wendelin of secretly plotting to seize his position as the next lord. Despite Wendelin's earnest denial and cautionary words regarding the growing discontent among the populace, Kurt remains angry, ordering Wendelin to leave immediately. Stepping out of Kurt's quarters, he encounters Amelie and her sons, who request a private conversation with him. As he shares his concerns with Amelie, expressing his earnest desire for a happy outcome for everyone involved, Wendelin admits his uncertainty about achieving such a result. She, in turn, reveals her singular focus on the safety and happiness of her children, explaining that her closeness to Wendelin stems from her husband's lack of prospects. Curious about Wendelin's potential role in her children's lives, she questions his stance on becoming a stepfather. In response, Wendelin, adding a touch of humor, deflects the question by mentioning his existing engagements with various women. Following his encounters with Kurt and Amelie, he finds himself grappling with uncertainty regarding his next steps. However, amidst the happiness of making mayo with his friends, Wendelin decides to take on the mantle of lord after careful consideration. Yet, he resolves to do so on his own terms, rejecting the palace's preconceived notions and opting for a unique approach to resolving his dilemma. Determined to uphold his vow of preserving lives, Wendelin enlists the unwavering support of his friends, who solemnly pledge to stand by his side. With their solidarity supporting his resolve, he embarks on a mission to safeguard the village. The subsequent day dawns with Wendelin and his companions transforming a corner of the village into a bustling mini-market. Their stall boasts an assortment of goods, ranging from the beloved mayo to exquisite garments and rare trinkets sourced exclusively from the capital. Villagers go to their shop, captivated by the superior quality of their offerings compared to the low-quality wares available elsewhere. However, the success of Wendelin's enterprise sparks discontent among Kurt's lackeys, who beseech their leader for intervention. Yet, Kurt finds himself powerless against Wendelin's formidable magical abilities, and his frustration boils over to an impotent rage. As the lackeys disperse in defeat, Wendelin seizes the moment to confront them, materializing before them with his friends encircling them, ready to address their grievances. The following day brings a harsh revelation for Kurt as he discovers that his loyal supporters have been swayed by his brother's tempting offer of a paid vacation to the capital, abandoning Kurt in the process. Meanwhile, Wendelin journeys to the capital to confide in Roderick, revealing his strategy to diminish Kurt's political influence by wooing away his supporters. Afterward, they embark on the task of apartment hunting. Wendelin's aspirations extend beyond political maneuvering. He envisions a peaceful home for Amalie and her 2 sons once he assumes the title of Lord. As for Kurt, he plans to send him to the church, a sanctuary removed from the palace's grasp. Unbeknownst to them, Ruckner, harboring malicious intent, schemes in the shadows. Ruckner's devious plot unfolds as he dispatches a messenger to Kurt, who finds him alone in the rain, consumed by thoughts of vengeance after Wendelin's successful bribery of his lackeys. The messenger presents Kurt with a gift from his master, a purportedly legendary item known as the Dragon Flute, promising it will aid Kurt in slaying his magician brother. Intrigued by Ruckner's sudden act of generosity, Kurt asks the messenger for further explanation. Learning of his evil desire for rights to the undeveloped land, Kurt realizes the potential alignment of their interests and agrees to the offer. With resolve, he ventures into the forest where Wendelin and his companions await. As he approaches alone, Brantag keenly senses his newfound confidence, hinting at the possession of something valuable. Sensing a shift in dynamics, Wendelin chooses to confront his brother, disguising their meeting as a mere coincidence. However, Kurt astutely recognizes the presence of Wendelin's retainers concealed in the leaves. With a surge of hostility, he directs baseless insults at Wendelin, gradually descending into erratic behavior. He asserts with a touch of madness that despite Wendelin's remarkable abilities, he cannot inherit the land due to his birth order as the 8th son. In a tense standoff, Kurt exposes the dragon flute received from Ruckner, threatening to sound it if anyone dares to move. Brantag immediately recognizes the flute's legendary status, understanding its capability to summon an army of dragons, a force even their group would struggle to contend with. As Wendelin's friends condemn Kurt's reckless actions, warning of the dire consequences if the dragons were to appear, Kurt dismisses their concerns with a mocking laugh, asserting that the dragons would spare the flute's wielder. Despite Wendelin's heartfelt appeals to reason, Kurt disowns his family and allies, branding them as traitors. He descends further into madness, heartlessly disregarding the well-being of his wife and children, and greedily anticipating the wealth he stands to gain from Wendelin's demise. Faced with his brother's irredeemable deviance, Wendelin's resolve to attack him intensifies, only to be met with Kurt's taunting threat to sound the flute. However, Kurt's boasting topples, and he flinches at the last moment, relishing in Wendelin's momentary fear. With a cruel laugh, he celebrates the sight of his genius magician brother reduced to terror. In a final desperate attempt, he blames Wendelin for the impending deaths, proclaiming that their blood will stain his hands for daring to compete for succession. With resolve, he raises the flute to his lips, poised to summon its power. Brantag, seizing the moment, launches a surprise attack at Kurt. But to his dismay, the flute deflects the assault, leaving Kurt smirking confidently, assured of his impending victory. As he blows into the flute, the sky darkens ominously, and ghostly spirits emerge from the ground. However, to everyone's surprise, no dragons appear, leaving them bewildered. Despite his brother's treachery, Wendelin remains determined to aid him, but Ina's intuition warns her against approaching Kurt, sensing an unsettling aura emanating from him. Elise, too, detects the malevolent energy exuding from the ghosts, making Brantag realize the truth. It dawns on him that Kurt did not possess the legendary dragon flute, but instead wielded the Flute of Grudges, a sinister artifact capable of summoning vengeful spirits to aid its user in a suicidal assault against their enemies. Kurt, deceived by the sender of the flute, had unknowingly unleashed its deadly power upon himself and his surroundings. As he becomes possessed by the vengeful spirits, his anger towards Wendelin intensifies, fueled by his own deep-seated grudges merging with those of the ghosts. His eyes blaze red with fury as the ghosts converge around him, morphing him into a colossal, monstrous entity. Wendelin, paralyzed by fear, watches in horror as his brother transforms into the monstrous form, with Brantag urging him to use his holy magic to vanquish the threat swiftly. However, overwhelmed by terror, Wendelin finds himself unable to act, frozen in place. Elise steps forward bravely, shielding Wendelin from the monster's onslaught with her own magic. Despite her valiant efforts, her powers alone are insufficient to overcome the formidable creature. Witnessing Elise's struggle snaps Wendelin back to reality, and he resolves to support her in their battle against the monstrous abomination. Realizing that there is no hope of saving his brother from the grip of the vengeful spirits, Wendelin decides to grant Kurt a peaceful departure. Channeling his holy magic alongside Elise's, he amplifies their combined power, unleashing a radiant burst of light that disintegrates the monstrous entity. In the heart of the explosion, Kurt, encased in a central capsule, is blown away before detonating in the distance. As the flute of grudges falls to the ground, Kurt's malevolent soul takes flight, seeking vengeance on the man who deceived him. Meanwhile, in the capital, Ruckner celebrates in his anticipated triumph, believing Kurt to have disposed of Wendelin and secured access to the coveted undeveloped land. His allies applaud his cunning plan, yet Ruckner remains wary of Kurt's loyalty, dismissing him as a mere country fool. Suddenly, Kurt's vengeful spirit shatters the window of the room, exacting revenge on Ruckner and his associates. The following day, Wendelin arrives in the capital and encounters Rodrich outside the scene of the incident. He learns of the gruesome events that transpired, with Kurt sole responsible for the lives of Ruckner, the party guests, and their entire families. Shockingly, the casualties include 12 noble families, leaving a profound impact on the realm. Though the priests have purified Kurt's malevolence, news of the massacre spreads rapidly. Rodrich cautions Wendelin that it's now unsafe for Amalie and her sons to remain in the capital, as their association with Kurt would provoke animosity from the populace. Recognizing the impossibility of a peaceful life for them in the capital, Wendelin resolves to relocate them elsewhere, regretting his inability to provide more for his sister-in-law. Later, when he meets Armstrong and Brantak, he shares that Herman has chosen to harbor Amalie and her sons within their family for the time being. Reflecting on the situation, he expresses his frustration with the noble's selfish manipulation of others as pawns, operating from the shadows. He curses Ruckner and condemns the nobles aligned with the king, labeling them all as selfish individuals. However, Brantag interjects, urging Wendelin to introspect and acknowledge his own status as a noble. The weight of Brantag's words weighs heavily on Wendelin, plunging him into a profound state of grief that lingers for many days. Sensing his distress, Elise observes his inner turmoil and offers him peace and reassurance, assuring him that he bears no fault for the actions of others. Her comforting words bring some feeling of peace to Wendelin's troubled heart, inspiring him to reject the cold-bloodedness of his noble peers and pledge himself to becoming a compassionate and benevolent ruler who prioritizes the well-being of his people. Encouraged by Elise's unwavering support, he resolves to embark on a path of noble leadership guided by empathy and integrity. With his resolve strengthened, Wendelin sets out to meet with the king, once the affairs at home have been settled. Impressed by his swift resolution of the undead in his territory, the king commends him and bestows the land to him as a reward. Additionally, recognizing the magnitude of developing such vast lands, the king offers Wendelin further reward and asks if there is anything else he desires. In response to the king's offer, he swiftly seizes the opportunity, proposing to allocate 2 vacant noble titles to individuals of his choosing in exchange for his efforts in developing the land. However, his proposition is met with staunch opposition from unexpected quarters. The Prime Minister, the General, and even a priest strictly object to Wendelin's request, deeming it audacious and inappropriate. They admonish him for his perceived rudeness and demand that he take back his proposal immediately. The General goes so far as to question Wendelin's suitability to oversee the vast tract of land, suggesting that half of it should be stripped from his control. In contrast, the Prime Minister contends that while the General may have ulterior motives, individuals possessing extraordinary magical abilities like Wendelin are essential for the land's development. Amidst the escalating quarrel, even the Pope interjects with his opinion, further fueling the heated debate. Duke Amadeus eventually joins the debate, openly aligning himself with Wendelin's cause. However, as selfish demands continue to spread through the discussion, Armstrong intervenes, silencing the dissenting voices and advising Wendelin to retract his request. Surprisingly, he steps forward, offering to take charge of half of the land for development using magic. However, the king dismisses his request, emphasizing the urgency of developing the territory and the necessity for Wendelin's singular focus on the task. Recognizing the paramount importance of the land's development, the king agrees to Wendelin's initial request, granting him the authority to confer 2 noble titles and elevating him to the rank of Count. Amidst the tension, Armstrong subtly signals his support for Wendelin, prompting a knowing wink between them. Though the king catches wind of their covert exchange, he proceeds with his decision, acknowledging Wendelin's role in the development of the territory and granting him the desired titles. Returning home after receiving his reward, Wendelin shares with Amalie his intention to bestow noble titles upon her children when they come of age. Grateful for his generosity, Amelie still extends her offer for him to become a stepfather, but Wendelin politely declines. Subsequently, he immerses himself in the task of developing his territory using magic, with Erwin and Rodrich assisting him in the field. While Wendelin seeks rest after clearing rocks from one area, Rodrich presses him to tackle another site, urging him to blast away rocks for the construction of a church. Wendelin soon learns that the Pope has plans to establish a church in his territory as part of an agreement brokered with the king. Additionally, the Duke, General, and Prime Minister have designs to erect holiday homes in the area. However, Wendelin has no intention of relinquishing the land to them, as he intends to establish a soy sauce factory instead. As he faces a burst of requests from his friends, he feels like he's in the middle of a crazy show. Louise and Armstrong show up like a funny team, dragging him off for their regular workout. Wilma gets all excited about a huge banana, like a kid in a candy store. Then Ina jumps in with an errand request, and Rodrich insists on finishing work first, adding a hectic twist to the existing chaos. With everyone bombarding him, Wendelin feels like he's caught in a whirlwind. Deciding to escape the madness, he heads home for lunch. Sitting down to a meal that reminds him of his past life, he can't help but laugh at the silliness of his new noble life. After all, who knew being the 8th son of a poor noble would come with such a crazy bunch of friends and hilarious situations? And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss out on any more of my recaps. Until next time, take care.